afternoon, everybody. My name is Lei Duan. I am a lecturer at Spatial Sciences Institute at the University of Southern California. My co-author is not here today, and he's a GIS manager at Southern California Association of Governments, SCAG. And for this research, we are trying to look at how we can actually promote active transportation, which include bus, bike, and walk, and trying to reduce greenhouse gas emission from reducing traffic miles that vehicle travels. So we're trying to do procedural modeling to see how we can involve public and what kind of message we can deliver. So for those of you who are not familiar with SCAG, SCAG is the biggest MPO in the nation, and it spans over 66 counties and 191 cities. So it is very important for us to think about what the growth will be like in the future, and how are we exactly going to put those growth. So in the long-range plan, the newest version of the long-range plan published by SCAG, we can see that between 2015 and 2045, the 6 counties belong to SCAG region will have 1.6 million jobs increase, 1.6 million household increase, and 3.6 million population increase. And that will bring the whole total population of the SCAG region to a total of 22.5 million. And for those of you for anybody who have traveled in cars in the Southern California area, you definitely have experienced bad traffic jams. So if we break down how we actually travel today in the Southern California area, you can see that for work purposes, a large number of the work trip is still contributed by a single occupancy vehicle. And for shopping purposes, single occupancy vehicle counts at 35.3. You might think that's not too bad, but look at what's the top one. Top one is high occupancy vehicle. It is still a vehicle, right? And the same situation with school travels. If we look at the bottom 3 rows, transit, bike, and walk, these are the ones, the transit mode that we're actually trying to promote, but look at how little ratio they have in terms of the total travel percentage today. If we look at how SCAG region household have grown from 2008 till 2016, and if we overlay with the freeways and urban and commuter rail in this area, you can see that no matter whether it's a high concentration or low concentration housing, there is a tendency that the housings tend to be concentrated around commuter rail or freeways because it's easier to get access to. That's easy to understand. However, given the situation that between 2007 and 2017, there is actually a 19% drop in the transit trip, which actually is a 143 million transit trip drop in the Southern California region, which means that in the past decade, people tend to drive more instead of taking public transit, which is what we should do. And that's why in the long-range plan from SCAG, they're trying to secure more funding and to promote services and to increase headway and create more convenient services for public to improve the public transit uses. And this all started from a Senate Bill number 375. This bill was approved in 2008. So there are 3 key points that we can take away from this bill that's related to the public transit. First is this bill really emphasized on the use of travel demand models to make any decisions. In other words, before you make any decisions about what kind of travel plans you're going to have, it has to be model results driven, data driven. It cannot just be, I like this region more, so let's put something there. It requires the MPO to adopt a sustainable community strategy to reduce greenhouse emission as well. So part of that translates to we need to think about a way to reduce the single vehicle, single occupancy or high occupancy vehicle that's actually on the road. And also it has to include a housing element to identify the existing and projected housing needs for all economic segments of the community. So given all the three guidelines and given all the policy support from the Senate Bill 375, SCAG actually produced a GIS layer, which is a high-quality transit area. It's a green layer you can see here on the screen, which is HQTA. HQTA is basically a half-mile buffer area around high-frequency stops and bus lines. So those stops and bus lines actually has a headway less or equal to 15 minutes. So those count as high-frequency lines. If housing are going to be built within this HQTA area, you will have better policy support. So we did the ridership projection. It's a complicated travel demand model. We are not going to detail, but the three major input are population projection, employment projection, and household projection. In the end, we had active transportation ridership projection results. So if we break down to look at the three categories of the traffic trip mode that we actually wanted to look at, you can see that walk trip, bike trip, and bus trips, somehow they all have the same tendency that they have a high concentration around the downtown area. That's why we picked this is a pilot project, so we picked a small area to look at. We picked a Koreatown and Westlake. So for those of you who are not familiar with LA, this area is right next to LA downtown. It is under high pressure of being displaced. And we have several layers of data to use, which is trip projection from the previous model, it's at TAZ level, household projection also at TAZ level, and a land use general plan, which is at parcel level. So in CityEngine, we put out all the existing buildings, which you can see on the bottom image. Those are all the existing buildings in the study area. And you can see that even if the buildings are colored in white, there is a high-density corridor along the Wilshire Boulevard, right there. And then because we only want to look at household allocation, and we realized that in the general plan, the household allocation actually shows 0 to those corridors, meaning that the plan actually wants to preserve those commercial area and only want to allocate the other single-family or existing multifamily area. And this is the result that we did. So we basically generated buildings in CityEngine and trying to color them as projected daily walk trip change. So if you see a red area, TAZ, that means you have the most increase of walk trip in that TAZ. And if you see a blue area, that means it has the least increase, but they are all increase. And the volume of the building shows the projected housing units under low density, which shows on the top image, and the high density scenario, which shows on the bottom image. And the similar results shows the bike trip changes and bus trip changes. And you will see that for bike trip and bus trip changes, the tendency is that the previous single-family area, it tends to have more increase. So following the long-range plan, we can actually promote more bus and bike trip in those single-family area right now. So you probably will see this gentrification fear sign everywhere around LA. People, if they don't understand the plan, they tend to be afraid of it. What if me being displaced? That's why we need this kind of visualization. Like the panelists that I discussed here previously, a key goal of why we have this kind of high technology is to involve public and to empower them to understand what your plan actually is, can actually open the conversation for you. So our next step is actually to visualize the SCAG Connect SoCal plan, which is already the plan you have seen, but we are trying to visualize that for all 6 counties. And then we are going to visualize everything and to find patterns and analyze those patterns, and eventually publish the regional plan through ArcGIS Urban. And this is the context. Thank you.